Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte goët.
Ms. Omar.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your testimonies. Mr. Adams, in 1991, you pleaded guilty to 2 counts of withholding information from Congress regarding your involvement in the Iran-Contra affair, for which you were later pardoned by President George H.W. Bush. I fail to understand why members of this committee or the American people should find any testimony that you give today to be truthful.
If I can respond to that.
It wasn't a question.
That
was not a question. I reserve the right to my time.
It is not right.
That was not a question.
Committee can attack
on February 8th,
who is not permitted to reply.
That was not a question. Thank you for your participation. On February 8th, 1982, you testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about U.S. policy in El Salvador. In that hearing, you dismissed as communist propaganda report about the massacre of El Mozote, in which more than 800 civilians, including children as young as 2 years old, were brutally murdered by U.S.-trained troops. During that massacre, some of those troops bragged about raping a 12-year-old girl before they killed them. Girls before they killed them. You later said that the U.S. policy in El Salvador was a fabulous achievement. Yes or no, do you still think so?
From the day that President Duarte was elected in a free election to this day, El Salvador has been a democracy. That's a fabulous achievement.
Yes or no, do you think that massacre was a fabulous achievement that happened under our watch?
That is a ridiculous question, and I
yes or no?
No.
I will take that as a yes.
I am not going to respond to that kind of personal attack, which is not a question.
Yes or no, would you support an armed faction within Venezuela that engages in war crimes, crimes against humanity or genocide, if you believe they were serving U.S. interests, as you did in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua?
I am not going to respond to that question. I'm sorry. I don't think this entire line of questioning is meant to be real questions, and so I will not reply.
Whether under your watch, a genocide will take place, and you will look the other way because American interests were being upheld, is a fair question. Because the American people want to know that anytime we engage a country, that we think about what our actions could be and how we believe our values are being furthered. That is my question. Will you make sure that human rights are not violated and that we uphold international and human rights?
I suppose there is a question in there, and the answer is that the entire thrust of American policy in Venezuela is to support the Venezuelan people's effort to restore democracy to their country. That's our policy.
I don't think anybody disputes that. The question I had for you is that does the interest of the United States include protecting human rights and include protecting people against genocide?
That is always the position of the United States.
Thank you. I yield back my time.
It is Thursday, the 14th of February of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. And this is the day for it, since it is Valentine's Day, and everybody considers it romantic that somebody was incarcerated for a period of time, and we honor his incarceration by the love letters he wrote to his beloved. Well, sounds romantic, doesn't it? I'm sure the truth was a little bit, shall we say, more real. Well, speaking of more real, what the hell is Andrew McCabe talking about conspiring with Pence and others in the administration to basically remove Trump from office in a book? Why not under, government testimony under oath? How about that? Why not that? On the other hand, maybe he already has. Or maybe he is soon to be. I know that they're going to bring back Whitaker. Because he obviously lied. And what was up with him? As soon as he was done with that hearing, he hightailed it right to Trump Tower to have a few meetings with Donnie. Actually, it wasn't Trump Tower. He met up with Donnie right afterwards. And, I don't know, it just seems so unseemly. What else? This whole thing with McCabe, that's the big blockbuster now. Even Rosenstein is reported to have considered wearing a wire whenever he would talk with Donnie Two Scoops. Well, McCabe also said that he took contemporaneous copious notes just like Comey did. And when Donnie Two Scoops Heffior finds out, because mobsters don't like people taking notes. Why would anybody take a note? Nobody takes a note. What were you doing taking a note? Because they're cops. And Donnie Two Scoops really hasn't dealt with cops who aren't corrupt. I'm sure the cops that he dealt with were fairly corrupt. And I'm sure he's met a few cops in government here in the federal level that, are kind of crooks themselves, but there's quite a few that are not, and he's not used to that. Jeez. And we are now suffering the consequences of that, and there were millions, tens of millions of people who voted for this person. Maybe we should build a wall around them. Maybe we should make them count how many gumballs are in the jar. Karma, maybe? Nah, I don't want to call it karma. I'm not really into retribution. But I don't know. If they want to live in gated communities, why don't we just let them? They want to have guard towers on every corner, why don't we put them up? That way no one will come and bother them. We already have a bunch of facilities built like that already. Why don't we take the ones that are in there and the ones that can be, honestly rehabilitated? Why don't we try to figure a way that they can be phased into society? And those who don't want to be a part of this society, they want to live behind a wall? Let's accommodate them. All right. We don't even have to use eminent domain. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here? Well, of course, oh my gosh, that was Representative Ilhan Omar. I like her. She told Elliot Abrams right to his face that he is an effing liar and a war criminal. And I would add, why is he not in The Hague? I mean, a pardon doesn't preclude the fact that he's a war criminal and he should be tried in a international court called The Hague. Frog March there, and then Frog Marched, and are there any Balkan right-wing genocidal dictators still alive there? I mean, he could room with them. He'd be happy. Jeez, Elliot Abrams. I am not going to answer your question because these are beneath the dignity. You don't you don't question an international war criminal like that. Give me more respect, bitch. Yeah, she was having none of it. Though he did admit at the very end there that, yes, grudgingly, yes, the true mission of the United States is to make sure that government transitions around the world don't include genocide. He had to admit it, and he just didn't want to. He fought. Because now he has to go back to Donnie Two Scoops and explain why he had to defend against genocide when Donnie Two Scoops has been dreaming about this since he started putting My Struggle on his bedstand. All those many decades ago. Furthering on here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A treasured sanctuary for butterflies in Texas is going to war with Trump over his border wall. It's now come to that. The butterflies have now declared armed conflict. Armed? Well, okay, they have wings. And, then what, 8 legs? Well, they're going to war over this, and they're also Texans. Texas butterflies, you don't mess around with them. When they beat their wings, somewhere around the world a hurricane will occur. The massive Equifax breach could be even scarier than first thought, and when I reported this, last summer, it was scary then. And House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says he's not an anti-Semite because he only uses anti-Semite tropes when he's attacking Jews who are Democrats. See, he's not an anti-Semite. Come on. They're Democrats. Everybody hates them. After the break, we move to the chef's table where climate scientist Warren Washington will be awarded the Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement. Indeed. And NASA announced that its Mars Land Rover Opportunity has died after 15 years of studying the red planet. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page, you will notice the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. To the leftish of the page is the contribute button, and if you could become a recurring Patreon to Netroots Radio, your recurring contribution keeps our lights on and helps pay our bills, and we are unable to do this without you, so thank you. Thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that platform, and thank you, Tom. And if you would like to follow me on Twitter, I can be found there at Justice Putnam. I, of course, post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. And if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, you can find us at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, iTunes, YouTube, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Probably mixed in with a not so fine because, that's the luck of the algorithm. And when I call it luck, yeah, there's a little bit of game theory there, like we're being gamed. That's how I always feel. Game theory. In the digital world, sure. Well, I was going over the 5 stages of grief once again. It's so odd. You can live a full life. I mean, going over 60 years, I'm officially older than Hemingway. And you pick up a few things along the way. And you think you know a few things. So when I've read the 5 stages of grief, even way before I ever had any inkling of what grief was. And along the way, I thought I had experienced true, profound, heart-stopping, soul-sucking grief, and I was wrong. Boy, was I wrong. But hard not to be angry with oneself. That's one of the stages of grief. I always thought the 5 stages of grief were behaviors in which that feeling was projected outward rather than pointing a finger inside. Boy, didn't prepare myself for that one either. What a process. Life is a process. And I'll say it once again. I mean, Kurt Vonnegut really did sum it up in just, 3 short words. So it goes. Because it does. No matter what. All right, let's get into this first article here. And we like to call them offerings because we're offering it to you. And I did not have the link open beforehand, and I should have. I'm a little bereft in my duties today. I'm kind of struggling, but we'll get through this. E.A. Crunden of Think Progress brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A treasured sanctuary for butterflies in Texas has found itself at the center of a revolt against Trump's long-touted border wall, and a growing reflection of the sentiments shared by Texas border environmentalists and private property owners alike. Put those two together, and I'm telling you, there's a wall that's going to be very hard to breach. Mariana Trevino Wright, the National Butterfly Center's executive director, said it's going to be an eyesore for one, do you think? I don't know if they can landscape it properly to, make it really look nice. But Donnie wants to spray paint it. We're an ecotourism destination. Who wants to go enjoy nature in a place that looks like a prison yard? Because probably that's how Donnie always felt when he would go on field trips as a kid and they would go experience nature somewhere, like Central Park maybe. God, I hate this. This is like a prison yard. So his idea of nature, he just figures, people would like it or something, somewhere. Well, the border wall will cut through the center's land and imperil the vulnerable creatures it cherishes. With options dwindling, the National Butterfly Center is taking desperate measures to stop the wall from being built on its property. Now, first you use the law before you set up really an armed resistance. I mean, the butterflies are not armed. They have 8 legs and some wings. You can't really call them armed. Okay. On Monday, the Texas Observer reported that the center had asked a federal judge to stop the Trump administration's border wall efforts on its property. Now, you have to understand, this is private property. I'm going to cut to the chase here a bit. The center is owned by the nonprofit North American Butterfly Association, and it contests that its property rights are being undermined by the government. I'll tell you what happened. As soon as Trump took over, as, I don't know, appointed leader of the free world installed by a hostile foreign power? I don't know. What's the title here? We don't use the P word for this guy here at Netroots Radio. We're precluded from it by the Netroots Radio Style Manual. And I have to tell you, that supersedes pretty much all law, at least within the confines of our little bubble. As soon as Trump took over and started touting his, as a real thing, his wall, government officials went on private land and started removing trees and other habitats on private property. Did not file an eminent domain claim. Did not discuss about the remuneration of a taking. Doesn't sound very American, does it? No. Has a different kind of heavy-handed feel to it. Doesn't it, comrade? Matthew Chapman of Alternet brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Equifax data breach in 2017 was one of the largest cybersecurity disasters in U.S. history. A flaw in the systems of one of America's leading 3 credit reporting corporations led to unknown thieves. Oh, really? Do we have any idea who they may be? Well, they accessed terabytes of data from over 140 million people, nearly half the American population, stealing Social Security numbers, birth dates, and home addresses. Some consumers also had credit cards, state driver's license information, email addresses, and tax IDs compromised as well. The breach caused widespread panic and prompted affected people to freeze their credit scores. Well, how nice. If you were affected, all of this information could potentially be used by identity thieves to do everything from opening credit cards and mortgages in your name to stealing your tax refund. Well, it's going to be a lot smaller this time. They won't get as much. In fact, they may even owe. Oh, except it'll still be you owing. Oops. Some people may have to take precautions for the rest of their lives. But what actually happened to the stolen data? Did anyone have their identity stolen? So far, there is no evidence that any of the data compromised by the Equifax breach has been used for criminal purposes. Oh, really now? Why is that? Bank officials and intel experts have been trolling through the dark web, identity-concealing websites that are used for selling black market data and criminal services, and they found nothing. But according to a report by CNBC, the implications of that could be even more frightening. The data might not have ended up in the hands of identity thieves, but of a hostile foreign intelligence service that plans to use it against the United States. I'm shocked. Shocked. It's almost like I told you so. There could be multiple reasons why Russia or China would want the financial information of millions of Americans. First, it could help them create an algorithm to identify people who might be American spies based on common traits of their financial records. Or, second, it could allow them to identify high-ranking government office holders or bureaucrats who are in debt and leverage their financial problems and turn them into spies for their side. I think I'm going to be watching some news feed someday, a decade from now, and see that some politicians are trying to do some crazy deal with some country we supposedly don't like, one anonymous intel expert told CNBC. And I'm really going to wonder, am I finally looking at the Equifax data after all this time? Willis of Share Blue Media brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Kevin McCarthy is defending himself against a tweet that he pushed out last summer that was really pushing a lot of anti-Semite tropes. He's saying he's not a Jew hater just because he hates Jews who are Democrats. I mean, come on, get real. Well, he accused George Soros, Michael Bloomberg, and Tom Steyer of trying to buy this election. Well, of course, Soros and Bloomberg are both Jewish. Steyer's father was Jewish, but he's often misidentified in the media as Jewish. I've been accused of being Jewish quite a bit, too. I don't know, maybe they're right. McCarthy's defense comes as he has been leading a campaign against Representative Ilhan Omar for comments she made about AIPAC, a pro-Israel lobbyist group which some have criticized as also anti-Semitic, saying that she was anti-Semitic for criticizing AIPAC. Excuse me. I would say that there's a lot of folks in the Jewish community who are not only coming to her defense, but have been criticizing AIPAC for quite a while. In an interview with Fox News yesterday, McCarthy insisted that his October 24, 2018 tweet, which he subsequently deleted amid massive outrage, had nothing to do about faith. Well, being an anti-Semite doesn't have anything to do about faith, Kevin. I mean, come on. I thought you were an elected official. You don't know this stuff? Oh, my God. Kevin. Well, Oliver Willis continues here. The double standard Republicans are trying to apply to Omar is reminding the country that Republicans were happy to campaign on anti-Semitism. McCarthy's tweet came at the time that the National Republican Congressional Committee, the party's campaign arm, released an ad targeting Soros, referencing well-known anti-Jewish tropes, showing Soros sitting behind piles of money. Even after a mass shooter who believed similar conspiracy theories about Soros attacked and killed innocent people worshiping in a Pittsburgh synagogue, the NRCC defended the ad as factual. In 2016, Trump's campaign repeatedly associated itself with anti-Semitism. Trump tweeted a picture of Hillary Clinton with piles of money and a Jewish star and attacking her as corrupt. An ad from his campaign showed images of Soros alongside other prominent Jews as the voiceover from Trump warned about global special interests. His campaign even had its surrogates appear on a radio show with a neo-Nazi and a Holocaust denier. And McCarthy, who was House Majority Leader at the time, never condemned or spoke out against Trump's incidents of anti-Semitism. Now he is attacking Omar and demanding serious consequences for her tweets, while ignoring the anti-Semitism in his own party and offering incredible rationalizations for his own flirtation with Jew-hating. All right, let's get to our break, and when we come back, we are going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. How many U.S. presidents can you name? For most people, researchers have found
the first couple are remembered, like Washington, Adams, and the last couple, Obama, Bush, people like that. But then nothing in between.
New York University's Pascal Wallish studies what's called neural data science, dealing with the huge amounts of data that come with studying neuronal activity. And he says our recall of presidents is governed by two factors, what's known as the primacy effect, who came first, and the recency effect, that's who's been around lately. He and his colleagues wanted to see if the same type of cultural memory pattern would hold true for pop music.
So the question was, well, is there like a cultural horizon or an event horizon? At what point, knowledge of something drops to zero?
So his team asked more than 600 volunteers, most of them millennials, to listen to snippets of Billboard #1 hits from 1940 to 2015 and to say whether they'd heard the songs before. Turns out the volunteers barely recognized tunes from the 40s and 50s.
And melt your cold, cold heart.
Suggesting the primacy effect holds for presidents, but not pop music. But the recency effect did seem to hold true, because songs released in the last few years were more recognized than those released in the aughts.
Drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot.
But then the recency effect stalled, because rather than continuing to drop in recognition back through the 90s, 80s, 70s, and 60s, songs in that 40-year period saw a steady plateau of recognition among the listeners, within which there was noticeable variability in song recognition, despite the fact that these were all #1 hits in their day. For example, some tunes were almost universally recognized, whereas other #1s barely registered.
I'm sorry for the way things are in China.
The study and full song list is in the journal PLOS ONE. It's not clear why the study subjects remembered what they did, whether music from the late 20th century had something special about it, or if maybe over-the-air radio DJs influenced the result.
So those are all great questions, and I think they're probably best addressed by doing this again in another 30 years when radio is basically gone, and then we'll see what is stable and what is not stable about this.
As for Wallish,
I listen to the softest pop you can imagine,
and an even more obscure genre.
I like to listen to my data.
Digital music is just numbers after all, and with certain programs you can analyze your data by listening to it. Just don't count on all those numbers turning into #1. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata. For the names of all the #1 hits you heard, check out the podcast page at scientificamerican.com.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser, filling in for your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. As the U.S. population ages, more people are at risk for injuries. The largest percentage of injury-related deaths among this group are caused by falls. Elizabeth Burns is with CDC's National Center for Injury Prevention and Control. She's joining us today to discuss ways to prevent injuries and deaths from falls among senior adults. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me.
Elizabeth, what are some of the more common consequences when a senior adult falls?
Well, first, it's important to note that falls are incredibly common. More than 1 in 4 older adults will fall in a given year. Common consequences include loss of independence and an increased fear of falling, as older adults are afraid to do the same kinds of activities they were doing before. And this can actually lead to more falls, as older adults have less strength in their lower body. Common consequences include hip fracture and traumatic brain injury. And ultimately, in 2016, almost 30,000 older adults died because of a fall.
So are falls more common in men or in women?
Falls are more common in women, and more women go to the emergency department because of a fall, and more women die because of a fall. However, the rate of fall deaths are more common in men than women. What this means is that out of 100,000 men, more will die from a fall than out of 100,000 women.
What are common causes of falls among older people?
Getting on and off the toilet and getting in and out of bed are common causes of falls. Walking around the hallways at night when the lights are off is a common way people fall. There's also an increased amount of medications used in seniors, which have side effects like making them lightheaded, and that increases the risk of falls and is a common cause.
With all of those factors, what are some ways our listeners can decrease their chances of falling?
Older adults should talk to their healthcare provider or doctor about how they can decrease their chances of falling. This can be done during the annual wellness visit or during annual physicals. The doctor will recommend an exercise program that should increase strength and balance or maybe refer you to a physical therapist. Additionally, they can look through your medications and perhaps reduce your doses or suggest medications that decrease your chances of falls.
Are there things we can do to modify our homes to prevent falling?
Oh, absolutely. Installing grab bars on the side of the toilet, making sure that rugs are taped down or removed, making sure that there's lighting in the hallways are all really simple ways that an older adult can modify their home to prevent falls.
Where can listeners go to get more information about preventing falls?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/study, and that's spelled STEADI.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I've been talking today with Elizabeth Burns about ways to prevent fall-related injuries and deaths among senior adults. Improving strength and agility through regular exercise and removing potential obstacles in the home can help decrease the risk for falls. If you or a loved one is older and struggle with mobility, talk with a healthcare provider about ways to decrease the risks for fall-related injuries and death. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Hanging in Adolf Hitler's office in 1931 was a large portrait of Henry Ford, because when it came to anti-Semitism, Hitler said, quote, "I regard Henry Ford as my inspiration." I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Facts regarding Ford's anti-Semitism are well-known, undisputed, and indeed self-authenticated. Some were included in a biographical sketch of him in a recent edition of the magazine of the Historical Society of Dearborn, Michigan, the birthplace of Ford's eponymous car company. In response to that article, the mayor of Dearborn, John O'Reilly, banned the distribution of the journal because the story interfered, he said, with his message and policies of inclusion. And O'Reilly, it seems, may well have full authority to censor the magazine because it's published by the city's Historical Commission, which is part and parcel and paid for by the city. Fortunately, censorship in America often backfires, and it did here. The mayor's attempted censorship has caused the article and the journal to be distributed far wider than it ever has been in the past. So now many, many more people, including many in Dearborn, know about Henry Ford's virulent and dangerous anti-Semitism, which is all to the good, because, as the philosopher and writer George Santayana said, quote, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I read the news today, oh,
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The budget deal brokered by a bipartisan group of lawmakers appears to be headed to the president's desk, and Trump has signaled that he'll sign it, despite his earlier protestations.
I can't say I'm happy. I can't say I'm thrilled. But the wall's getting built. Regardless, doesn't matter, because we're doing other things beyond what we're talking about here.
$375 billion for 55 miles of new fences along the border, short of the $5.7 billion Trump had sought for 234 miles of steel walls. At his rally in El Paso on Monday night, signs around the arena read, "Finish the wall," as Trump lied to the crowd, claiming construction was already underway.
Today, we started a big, beautiful wall right on the Rio Grande. Right smack on the Rio Grande.
Well, that calls for some fact-checking. So let's listen to Shepard Smith, who actually tells the truth on Fox.
A bipartisan deal on border security. The Senate Majority Leader, the Republican Mitch McConnell, calls it good news. His Democratic counterpart, Chuck Schumer, calls it a path forward. Some more conservative Republicans are crying foul. But President Trump, are you happy?
Am I happy at first glance? I just got to see it. The answer is no. I'm not. I'm not happy. But am I happy with where we're going? I'm thrilled. Because we're supplementing things and moving things around, and we're doing things that are fantastic and taking from far less important areas. And the bottom line is we're building a lot of walls.
That's incorrect. He's been saying it for a while now, but it's simply not true. The facts are these. Workers have replaced and repaired sections of the existing wall and fences, but so far they have not built anything new. Construction is set to begin on a 14-mile extension in the Rio Grande Valley later this month. And this just-announced deal in Congress could create 55 miles of new fencing and barrier. No wall. That's if it passes in Congress and if the president signs it. And even then, it's 10 miles less than what lawmakers offered the White House last year, long before the government shutdown. Still, there is some wiggle room that could allow the president to add more money for his proposed wall and more money for detaining people. Presuming, of course, this deal gets done.
A White House official told the Washington Post that Trump sees signing the border deal, if passed by Congress, as the way to avoid another shutdown. But he would also likely pursue an executive order to reallocate federal funds to barrier projects. The budget deal must pass by Friday at midnight to avoid another shutdown, and Congress is scheduled to be out next week for the President's Day holiday. The Violence Against Women Act was extended as part of the last government funding bill, and it expires Friday. Republicans have pushed for a straight, clean extension as part of this bill. Democrats want to deal with the Violence Against Women Act separately. They have their own bill. But if it's not extended before Friday, it will lapse. CNN on Tuesday night proved it learned nothing from its coverage of the 2016 presidential elections, and for some reason held a town hall event in Houston with former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz, who hasn't even declared his candidacy yet, but has said he'd run as a centrist independent. Schultz criticized progressive tax increases and called the Green New Deal plan immoral, without offering specifics on how he'd address those issues differently. He also refused to commit to selling his Starbucks shares if he were to be elected president. When pressed, Schultz wouldn't say he'd drop out of the race if polls showed his candidacy was helping Trump. Schultz was panned online for his comments regarding Starbucks' handling of a racial profiling incident in Philadelphia last year.
Starbucks is a diverse organization, and we want to do everything we can. It was a terrible moment for the company. It's not something that we're going to forget, and it's something that we learned a great deal from, and we're still learning it about. And I would just say, as somebody who grew up in a very diverse background as a young boy in the projects, I didn't see color as a young boy. And I honestly don't see color now. And I want to do everything I can in terms of the character and the dignity of what it means to be the President of the United States.
The internet quickly pointed out that "I don't see color" was a running Stephen Colbert gag.
I want to say that I am not a racist. I don't even see race, not even my own. People tell me I'm white, and I believe them because I just devoted 6 minutes to explaining how I'm not a racist.
Thursday marks the first anniversary of the mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, that left 17 people dead. On Tuesday, Congressman Ted Deutsch, who represents that district, and Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey introduced a bill banning any gun magazine that exceeds 10 rounds of ammunition. During a news conference on Capitol Hill, the Democratic legislators described the bill as one step in a process of passing individual gun control measures instead of a big comprehensive package. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From UN headquarters, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Germany arrested 2 men this week on charges of crimes against humanity for helping run a systematized torture regime to punish opponents of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad during Arab Spring protests in 2011 and 2012. Those alleged crimes took place in Syria, and both victims and the alleged perpetrators are Syrians. That makes delivering justice difficult, though not impossible, even after Russia vetoed a referral of Syrian crimes to the international court system. Beth Van Schok is a faculty fellow at Stanford University's Honda Center for Human Rights and International Justice.
The concept of universal jurisdiction says that any state in the world has the ability to prosecute international crimes, regardless of whether or not there's any nexus to the particular state. So what Germany has done here is working through what's called a joint investigative team, a JIT, throughout Europe, has opened an investigation into perpetrators who are potentially in Europe.
Even when perpetrators are captured, universal jurisdiction cases are often difficult to prosecute since evidence of crimes is often hard to come by, and witnesses can be even more difficult to locate. But years of work by human rights groups and legal experts to document the crimes of the Syrian war as they happened gives prosecutors a fighting chance.
We're in a better position when it comes to the Syrian conflict than we've ever been with respect to a conflict. It is now the most documented crime base in the history of the planet, really. We have evidence involving all perpetrators, all sides, that is now available for prosecutors as long as they can get jurisdiction over individuals who are deemed responsible.
And that is where the 7-year exodus of Syrians to Europe comes in handy.
Germany is benefiting from the fact that it is playing host to a number of victims because they will be now serving as witnesses to make these cases successful.
Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit. The winds are light and variable, right now about 1 to 2 miles light and variable, by the way, out of the east-northeast. We've already had about a half an inch of rain overnight. We are looking at, another quarter of an inch at least for the day, and the winds will then be shifting in about an hour to 2 hours out of the south proper and increase in their velocity at 10 to 20 miles per hour in sustained winds with gusts, 50 miles an hour. Got to be careful. Winds will decrease later on tonight at about 5 to 10 miles per hour. Will shift tomorrow out of the south-southeast at 10 to 15 miles per hour. So we will be having a bit of wind, and we will also be in another active winter storm warning beginning, in a few hours from now and continuing until late tomorrow, maybe even into Saturday. We are expecting rain and snow tonight and rain and snow tomorrow. and a bit of clearing maybe on Saturday, and then more rain and snow on Sunday for a few more days. Pollen is none. Air quality index is at 23 parts per million, and the daytime UV index has clicked up to moderate to 3. It had been in the low range at 2 to 1. Now it's at 3. Once again, barometric pressure is holding steady, 28.92 inches. Visibility is at 4 miles, and relative humidity is 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. And they do. Because the person just outside of London proper, actually he's at St. James, they are registering 57 degrees and sunny. Paris is 56 degrees and sunny. I'd rather be in Paris, to be honest with you. Rome is 60 degrees and sunny. Toss up between Paris and Rome. Kiev is 33 with fog. Kabul is 34 and fair. Not to the wedding parties that are getting bombed by drones. I keep reminding people that. Be careful. Hong Kong is 65 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 36 and partly cloudy with another dry air advisory. They're getting a lot of those here recently. Sydney, Australia is 67 and fair. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees Fahrenheit, mostly cloudy with wind, and they have a gale warning themselves. They've upped from small craft advisory to gale. And New York is a crisp 38 degrees Fahrenheit. And that makes it fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Marlene Simmons of Nexus Media brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Warren Washington can trace at least one of the origins of his extraordinary scientific career, more than half a century of groundbreaking advances in computer climate modeling, to a youthful curiosity about the color of egg yolks. I had some wonderful teachers in high school, including a chemistry teacher, who really got me started, he said. One day I asked her, "Why are egg yolks yellow?" She said, "Why don't you find out?" So he did. He still remembers the answer. The sulfur compounds in chicken feed become concentrated in the yolk, turning it yellow. I also had an excellent physics teacher, he said, describing why he became an atmospheric scientist. Those teachers would be immensely proud of him today. Before the evolution of sophisticated computers, scientists knew little about the atmosphere other than what they could observe outright. Then a young black scientist came along, eager to use early computers to understand the workings of the Earth's climate. He collaborated in creating the earliest computer climate models and went on to advise 6 presidents about climate change: Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama. He was awarded the National Medal of Science in 2010 by President Obama. Washington, now age 82, recently retired after 54 years at the National Center of Atmospheric Research. Though it isn't much of a retirement, he still continues to conduct research as a distinguished scholar. Now, since this is the amuse-bouche part here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, do go to the show notes and links diary and read the rest of the article. It's quite comprehensive and gives a very, very complete biography of Dr. Washington, and what an amazing man he is. Congratulations, Dr. Washington, on this great achievement.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Alex Henderson of Alternate brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Well, folks, opportunity has died on Mars. And I don't mean the capitalist idea of what opportunity can mean. I mean the Mars rover Opportunity has not been able to be roused from a very deep sleep caused by a dust storm on the violent red planet. No wonder they call it Mars. Damn him. NASA announced yesterday that its Mars land rover Opportunity has died after 15 years. The six-wheeled vehicle's death is being attributed to a severe dust storm. So dusty that when the next winds came up, it couldn't blow the dust off of the solar panels. I'm holding out hope that maybe there's a little bit of a signal deep inside there, and maybe if the solar panels get cleaned off somehow. Well, Opportunity was one of two slow-moving rovers that landed on Mars in 2004. Spirit didn't last as long as Opportunity, which persisted several years longer. Communications with Spirit were lost after it was caught in a sand trap. But both vehicles exceeded NASA's expectations. They were both supposed to live only about 90 months. 90 days. 90 days is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, pretty good. So communication with Opportunity was lost in June of 2018. And as the rugged vehicle was no match for the severe dust storms it encountered. Opportunity was the fifth of 8 NASA space vehicles that have successfully landed on Mars. 2 of them are still working. Curiosity, which landed in 2012, and Insight, which only recently landed. So we've still got some presence there. And that's fun, too. Well, goodbye, Opportunity. It was fun while we had you. And that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. Now, you know that Netroots Radio is going to be broadcasting all day and all night. We'll meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, and don't we need it? So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here, right here tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.